so that when people are on, then you post, that way you can get the most people looking at it and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, so we need to do some underwater environment stuff. Let's do some basic things here first. So one of the big things for everybody is going to be the light that comes down through the water and forms the patterns on top, right, for almost all of them. These are caustics, C-A-U-S-T-I-C-S. And the program does do caustics, actual caustics. So for instance, if we, as an example, I'm going to set up something that's transparent a little bit on this. So we're talking about rendering underwater, Corey. And I'm just going to use a point light for now. And so I've got, this, we'll call this water surface. And I've got this light up here above it, and that's casting down. So if this water surface gets disturbed, I think does it do for bump and displacement?
Faster you did alpha.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'm just sort of demonstrating the concept first here. So let's just do it with displacement for now. So I'm actually going to move the surface of this. So let's put some noise on the displacement channel of the water surface. And you should see it. Yeah, we can see it a little bit here. And if I turn it up, there we go. You see it's starting to move the water surface there. But on the displacement channel, remember, we have the height setting here. But by default, it's only going to displace the polygons that are already there. If you want smoothness to this, you need to tell it to subdivide at render time. And then now it's subdividing 4 times. We don't need that many. How about just 2? The pattern's way too small. And come into the scale, maybe 900. Even that's too small. Let's say 2000 on the scale. Okay, now it's at least some sort of smooth water surface. And then on the material, we start bending some of the light with the refraction, and in the let's do it this way. And turn on my light. And let's take the visible light and make it volumetric. We've talked about volumetric light, right? Have we? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so the same in Unity and here. Volumetric light means that we can now see the light, and we'll start to get some light beams coming down here. Let's get this smaller. And some patterns. Let's make our water surface bigger. and we can start to get some of this. The problem is, as you can see, this is super slow. And there's really no great ways to sort of increase this sort of thing. If we look in the manual here, it does this sort of with this particle kind of approach. If you look for caustics, caustics is not the render word, just sort of the light word, just the general physics vocabulary. I don't know why all of a sudden the search is so slow. We'll come back to that. So the general point here is by bending the actual, plane and having this come down, that all theoretically could work, but it's all way too slow to actually work with on a regular basis, which is why we usually do what Cliff was saying and set up, like a stencil or gobo, right, is the word for theater. When you put the bat signal is a gobo, right, where you put the thing in front of the light to get the pattern, right? So we can do that. And so let's get rid of this and do that approach. So I'm going to go ahead and create a plane, and we're going to create just essentially like a light filter, yeah, gobo, and double click, new one here. And so because of that, we're just going to essentially cut holes in this with the alpha channel. And so I'm going to turn off reflectance, just turn on alpha. And in the alpha channel, there's a noise that works really well for this. If you go to noise, SEMA, S-E-M-A, is a pattern. See, you can just see it right now along the top there. See how I cut that out? Like, we're already getting something here. One of the problems with using the noise in the alpha channel is the resolution in the viewer is not the same if you look at the resolution of the noise there versus here. And so having the interactive render region is important to do that. And we can see how that's already giving us that like volumetric light look even without any tuning. And so SEMA, the scale is going to need to be way up. Let's say 5,000. Maybe not that big. Let's say 1,000. So depending on if you built your whale to scale, numbers may be similar. Let's say 500. I think yours is, yeah. Or at least close. There we go. So you see this is working now. The only problem is that it's kind of reversed. Let's see. Let's move our light up. And I'm using a point light right now, just for the sake of expediency, but we're not going to want these lights coming out from a point like this. This is kind of like the sunlight coming through the surface of the water, right? And so I'm going to get rid of the point light, and I'm not going to do an infinite light like we would usually do for sunlight. I want a little bit more control, so I'm going to do a spot. And so I can actually, you know what, I'm going to do a target spot because that's a little bit more easier to control. So target light, there we go. And now I can move this where I want. So let's move it sort of over here, up, kind of like so. And then I can move my target, to be whichever I want. And then the thing, the default spot is still coming out from a point. So if you look at it up here, it looks like that. We still want the light to be parallel. And so under type, there is a parallel spot, which is super handy. And now you'll see that it's it's essentially a big cylinder that the light is shooting from. And so now, if I look through here, we see it'll be way more. I got to go back and turn on my volumetric, or just regular volumetric. And if we look at the top of the whale here, there we go. We're starting to get this pattern along the top. I think this is still maybe a little bit too, and so under volumetric, let's say shadow map soft, volumetric. There we go. Now we're getting the patterns along the top. Everybody see what I'm talking about there? So with this, if you look at the ball here, this is kind of not what we want. We want the inverse of this. There's a couple ways to do the inversion. I suppose the easiest one is just to flip the colors on the noise. So I'm going to make the white black and the black white, so that, remember, the white part is solid and the black part is the hole, essentially. There we go. So see what's happening along the top here? It's a pretty good, this noise is pretty good at making that, pattern. And the sharpness of the pattern is controlled by the light shadow map. And so by default, it's using a 250 pixel by 250 pixel texture to cut out the light. And the larger this is, the sharper that'll be. And so you don't want it to be totally sharp, but maybe a little bit sharper than this. Let's say 1,000. And let's watch. Right, so too sharp now, right, for our purposes. But everybody saw what happened there with that? Yeah? So let's go back to maybe 500. And again, this is under the light shadow map after I set it to shadow map soft. And this gives us that pattern, light pattern, maybe even, depending on this size, let's keep it at 250, I guess. And it still feels too small. And so under visibility, or so in the noise, actually, I'm going to, let's make it 3,000. There we go. And if we look up, cool. So if I want this coming along the entire size of the whale, I can sort of just adjust my size of my light. So I have this shooting through the entire thing. I probably don't want to see the edges of this, so I'm going to make sure my plane is larger than the size of the light. And now, let's see what that looks like. Oh, you have global illumination on, right?
Yeah,
There we go. Right, so we're going to have to layer a few things here to start creating this kind of look. But that's giving us one of the important underwater components, is this, essentially just cutting out the light in that pattern to give you that amongst the, and you also don't want to see the actual thing in the, the cutout. And so we could plain compositing tag let's say seen by camera is off. And let's turn up the intensity of the light a little bit. There we go. Right, so that's giving us, that's not bad. Now, it's got to animate, otherwise it won't look like water, right? Because if it stays still, that doesn't look right. How do we animate it? In the noise texture that's on alpha, there is speed. And so this is, you don't animate this, you just turn it on or off. So this is the speed at which the noise animates. And a little bit here goes a long way, so I'm going to try 1. And we should be able to see, it's not going to do anything in the viewport, but if we kind of do a little bit of frame by frame, we should be able to see the light changing. And so let's look here. Yeah, it's shifting there. See that along the top? And in order to dial the speed in, I think I would really do a test render. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off saving, turn it down to like 400 by 150, and say all frames, and just render that to sort of get a feel for what the light speed actually looks like. Not fast enough. Let's turn it up. Oh, sorry. Wrong one. Not movement speed. Up here, animation speed. 1. There we go. Yeah, so you can see how much this moves. So let's make it 0.1. And let's see how that looks. Yes. There we go. See what's happening there along the top? Yeah, so there's this 2 speed, not the first speed, the one that says animation speed, not the one that says speed underneath movement. That's a pretty good speed. Like I said, it's hard to dial this in because you're not going to get any viewport feedback on this. And so just doing the super low res render. But this, it's not rendering super quick, but it's rendering okay. To do this with the actual caustic system would just be like, it just takes way too long. It's really, really slow. Cinema 4D just bought a GPU renderer, Redshift. So, I imagine it's going to get integrated into the program probably with this next one. I mean, it happened almost less than a year ago. But the C4D cycle is in the, they release at like SIGGRAPH, so that's always in August. So I imagine this next cycle, hopefully it'll be somewhat integrated in there. I don't know, we'll see. But that's the kind of thing where, C4D, the default renderer, is still CPU based. Each one of those little yellow blocks is one of the cores on the CPU chugging away, making those pixels. And so the GPU renderers use all the cores on your GPU. And if you have a GPU, even like a middle of the road GPU has like, I don't know, 500 cores on it at least, They're different than CPU cores, but anyways, it's faster, much faster. And so doing stuff like this with actual caustics would be, feasible. Whereas here,
well, on the video that was in the thing at the art museum, the particle effect I did with all those millions of particles was on the GPU system because it wouldn't do that with the regular particle system.
yeah, all these sort of really processor-intensive things are being rewritten for. The other thing about the GPU is that it's parallel, not serial. The CPU, even if it's super, super fast, it's still doing pretty much one thing at a time, or each core is doing one thing at a time, whereas all the cores in the GPU run simultaneously, because it makes sense for drawing images, right? You want to get all the pixels there at the same time. But anyways, you see, that's pretty good as far as like caustic speed. So yeah, 0.1, so the key things to remember here that I would write down are the light has to be, I think it's easier with a parallel spot. So the parallel spot lets me have some real control over where things are going. It's got to be shadow maps soft, and it's got to be volumetric light. The plane, the water surface, is super simple. I only have, I don't even think I need a color channel, actually. Yeah, I don't need a color channel at all, because I put a compositing tag on there, so I just don't see, the camera doesn't see it anyway right now. Because if I want to make an actual visible surface of the water, I'll do that with a different thing. But here, I put that SEMA noise on the alpha channel, and you're going to need to turn up the global scale quite a bit, probably, unless your shark or whale is much, much smaller than real life. And then under animation speed, I put it at 0.1. I didn't animate it. You don't need to animate this parameter. This is just like how fast it moves, like it's speed. It's already in animation. And so those things combined give me the caustic surface of the water look. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think that's a really good speed. That looks bad. That's not too bad. All right, so let's get some more layers of stuff happening here. I think one of the other ones that's going to be important here is I'm going to go ahead. This one's looking good. I want some more light rays coming down. And so if I look at the light, once you make it volumetric, you see that there's, without volumetric light, without volumetric, we just have this slider, which is just how far the light goes, okay? But we don't actually ever see any light rays because it's not volumetric. Once I tell it to be volumetric, watch, I get another handle here in the middle. And so this handle here is how far the volumetric light goes, which is why we weren't seeing any light rays go through here. If I drag this down past the surface, now, if we look at this, let's look up. We'll get some of this coming through, and we'll get some light rays happening here. Let's get it. Let's move the. You have to do some trial and error here to get the look how you want. There we go. Now we're getting some of that sort of like striation. And one way to get more of it is to turn up the intensity of the light. So I could do that. Let's see what that looks like. That makes it a little bit more pronounced. And it also makes them much brighter on the surface of the whale. That actually doesn't look too bad. If this whale was close to the surface, that looks pretty good. It's already doing a lot to make Mike's texture look way better. This looks really good here. I like this scarring. Where is he? All right, someone tell Mike how much I like that later when he gets back. But you can adjust the visibility of the volumetrics independently from the intensity of the light. Under visibility, there's two things here that matter: sample distance and brightness. Do not turn on dust. Okay, this doesn't do what you want it to do, and it just really kills your render time. So don't just forget that slider is even there. Okay, don't touch that one. There's other ways to do particulate in the air or the water. Anyways, here's the brightness for the actual volumetrics. And so put this at like 500. Let's see. You see that I get way more light, visible light, but that the light on the whale doesn't change quite as much. Right? And so now I'm getting more of that surface of the water kind of look. Maybe I move the light up a little bit more. And move these two, oops. Down, down. There we go. So you can see how much better this is just right now, just with this one light. The other thing people do a lot that doesn't look great is they're like, I'm underwater, I'm gonna make my light blue. That does, maybe just a little bit, not much. This does not look good, right? Why does it not look good? Because this is essentially what these are, the specular highlights here. And no matter what, these are usually blowing out to white. And so having them, disco colored like this just doesn't look good at all, right? So maybe just add a little bit of tint to it, but just to get it off of, 100% white as far as a different value. But just, when you tint the lights for all of your 3D stuff, just a taste, just a sprinkle, right? It's like rendering, setting this stuff up is a lot like cooking, right? If you just dump a whole bunch of spice in it, it's not going to be very good. I would say that one of the other things to do right off the bat here is make some camera decisions. So let's take a camera, look through here, and we're underwater. Has anyone done any underwater photography of any kind? I have not. You have? Yeah? So you're using usually a pretty wide thing, right? Wide angle. So I don't know, let's see what 24 looks like. Yeah, I would say between 24 and 18 millimeter lens, as far as like see how the whale, we get much more foreshortening now, and this is starting to look less like a render and more like, actual perspective. There's not a scuba guy in the content browser, which now that I think about it is probably for the best, because at some point in previous semesters somebody would have just had the shark eat them, I'm sure. Cool. All right, so we're doing pretty good here. We need some more. So this is essentially, I'll rename this light to my caustics light. And let's add some more just general light here. And for that, I'll go ahead and use an infinite light so that, again, I'm still getting the parallel. And it's still going to be primarily coming from the top. Global illumination here, if we were to bounce, and if this whale were in a living room, global illumination might be helpful, right? Because we'd be able to bounce light off of the floor and have it light things, but in this case, we're probably going to need to make our own bounce lights to sort of fill in some of the shadow. So that's better. And let's go ahead and create another, I'm going to say target spot for light coming from the bottom. Target light. And let's bring this up. Let's not look through my camera for a second. I'm going to take this light target and so did you shoot video or stills underwater, Cliff?
Film. You remember that stuff?
Barely. Yeah, and so I'll call this either bounce light or, in this case, bottom light. And, this is not going to need to be, I can tint this one. More greenish, and this is definitely does not need to be as bright. Yeah, filling it in there even less maybe. Just so that the bottom of our whale isn't falling off in the complete digital blackness. Mike, the scarring on here looks better now that we've got some lights happening.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so even here, this bottom light with its green tint, too much, and then turn it down. And just sort of filling in. So the global illumination here, not going to do a lot for us, right? So you're just wasting time. You're making your render time longer for the global illumination on this one. It's probably going to be better off sort of lighting it. We need some light here in the front. I might move this target a little bit this way, and this light, my bottom light. Make sure I'm getting the front of the whale there. There he is. So I can sort of see where that light's going at least. And so none of these lights are casting shadows. Not my, I'll call this just fill light right now. Bottom light, none of those are casting shadows. I'm just using them to sort of fill in some of the lighting on my subject. And turn this way down, get some faster feedback. Yeah, there we go. All right, now we need some background and some environment. So let's go ahead here and grab well, let's try it this way first. Let's go ahead. Yeah, the environment object, Shift-C, environment, has both things. It allows us to pick a color and it gives us fog. Sort of basic fog. And so if I turn this on, you'll see it kind of does this by default. And so we have our color, strength, and distance. And so the distance here, this is the distance to environment fog fills the entire screen, stretching to infinity. The distance refers to the fog's intensity by specifying the distance at which the light beam loses intensity. As like, Yeah, so if this is shorter, right now it's, what is it, 10,000 centimeters? If I put 10, it's thicker, right? That's the distance over which it gets sucked up by the fog. So 500, I want to see some sort of distance from head to tail, essentially. So let's say 2. Let's say 20. 8. There we go. Right? So see what's going on there? Now I get some sort of visible change over the course of it. So maybe back a little bit more, let's say 9. There we go. And so this is in a little bit of that. Let's go ahead and tint this a little bit. Let's see, environment. And let's make this much darker. Getting there. Let's chill this out. This light down here too bright. That's my bottom light. Let's just say 10. I might even less, 5. 2. There we go. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. What is the name of the other one? Micro floaties. Okay, so this gives us that sense of depth here, right? Everybody see that? How the tail, we're losing saturation in the tail because of the fog now. So we're getting better, and we have a focal length that makes sense. I would say, yeah, somewhere in that 24 millimeter down to 18 millimeter range for the focal length. So we're getting closer here. We need some more. We're getting some caustic light. We've got some caustic patterns along the top. So far, so good. We're going to need some movement on our camera. The camera can't not move, or else the underwater photography just doesn't look at all credible, right? It looks lame because you're not putting it on a tripod underwater or anything. So there's a couple different ways to do this. I suppose the quickest one is to put a vibrate tag on the camera. So here we could add a little bit of position and a little bit of rotation. By default, it'll be way too much, right? But under amplitude for the position here, let's say 5, 5, 5, and then frequency like 0.2. Why are we not moving up and down? Maybe this is more. And then for the rotation, let's say 5, 5, 5, and again 0.1. Maybe a little bit more yaw. That's yaw, right? Does anyone have a helicopter license?
My dad's going for his plane license.
What's that?
My dad's possibly going for a plane license.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. We're getting some camera movement. That's okay. I think you could spend a little bit more time with that. The other thing to investigate here is right-click motion camera tags, motion camera.
Right click on the camera, on the camera.
Yeah, it's just a tag. So if you just Shift-C motion camera, that'll come up. If you make a camera, Shift-C motion camera tag, they made this fun little dude. And so this is this whole tag that's designed to animate handheld motion. But for what we're doing, especially because it's underwater, it's not like, you know, news footage or something like that.
So tell me there's an age parameter on that.
Oh. How many vertebrae the little stick guy still has left? Or how many have not been fused? Head, parallax, height. Yeah, there's a whole... Oh yeah, foot dynamics. Oh yeah, calm, steady cam, ego, dogma cam. Yeah, so this is fun, but probably unnecessary for what we're doing. Just, you know, tuning the vibrate tag here, I think would do a lot to give the camera some motion. The whale still needs to move here, right? We need to get the whale and the spline wrap moving forward through the frame. But I think this is a good starting point to have it animate there. One more thing, let's take our aerial light, or sorry, infinite light, and use this to create one more layer of visible stuff. And so under, let's make this one volumetric, and under visibility, let's go ahead and turn up our brightness for this. Let's see this light by itself. So I'm going to turn off the bottom light and my caustics light for a second, so I can just focus on what I'm doing here. I'm also going to turn off my environment for a second, so I can just see what this is doing. Here we go, fill light, and we gotta say shadow map soft, and then what am I missing here? Yeah, let's do it with the other spot. So I'm going to duplicate my caustics light. In this case, I don't want it actually being cut out. And so in this light, you can actually tell which things to ignore and which things not to ignore. Under exclude, I'm going to exclude the water surface. There we go. And let's just look at this. There we go. And maybe move this one around a little bit. A little bit more this way, maybe. There we go. Let's get this to create some more atmosphere. So I'm going to extend this, extend the volumetrics. There we go. So we're getting that coming off of the back there. And let's turn that down a little bit. All right, so that's giving us another layer of just sort of like fog fall off. Let's add the bottom light. Let's get that a little bit more. There we go. And then let's add the caustics light. There we go. So I think that's not a bad series of things. So from here, again, here's the bottom light, right? So that's just the light coming up from the bottom, sort of give us something on the mouth there. Here's the, we'll call this just fill light. And this is a duplicate of the caustics light, just without, it told it to ignore the caustics thing, just to create some more haze and fill in there. So those two together. Then turning on the caustics light gives us that. That's not bad. And then turning the environment on. There we go. And falls off a little bit more. And let's see if we can add one more bit of this with some background to it.
Was there a highlight on the mouth?
Yeah.
Because that's not as bright as it was.
Yeah, so the bottom light.
Oh. Is that?
Yeah, that's the thing that's coming up from that angle. So I think once I turned everything back on, yeah, that one got kind of swallowed up. So there it is, a little bit better. Let's add one more thing. Let's go ahead and say a sky and put a gradient on it. So luminance, gradient, and we want this to be a vertical gradient from dark to bluish. And put that on the sky. Some of that's getting covered up by the environment. And so the environment strength did I put this on the right channel? Luminance, sky, yes. Well, we're not seeing this at all. We've got it, got it. Let's make this a little bit brighter. Oh, it's probably just, let's move some of these sliders. Yeah, the environment's covering it up. So let's go ahead and say, or even if the environment strength off, it covers up the sky. We can't load a thing in here, can we? Where are we without the environment? There we go. I mean, there's some options there. So that's with the sky object, because the other one's covering up, I don't know, what do you guys think? This,
You still get the environmental fog though, right?
I get the fog from the fill light. Remember, the fill light has volumetrics, and so that's creating some fog, and the environment is creating
Yeah, but the
more
environment
fog.
was creating that depth of field you were looking for, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, they're both doing that. So, you know, it just depends how much of that you want, as far as like the fall off of what's happening there. So there's that. Let's A/B this. So,
There's not a tag that can say ignore the.
let's see here. Because this is on the lumens channel with this one. Environment. Oh yeah, here we go. Effect background.
Yeah, that's nice.
So if you turn effect background off, then we can mix. So we get yeah, so that fills it in a little bit too much. Yeah, so if you on the environment uncheck effect background, then you can have more explicit control over that. Yeah, so that's pretty, I don't know, that's pretty good. We're close-ish. Yeah, and once we get some movement there with the mouth, I think, again, you don't want the mouth to ever totally freeze. I think just giving it a little bit of up and down, in your case, Mike, right?
Yeah.
And having this move through the frame.
So on the video that you posted last time, was that having a channel move?
Yeah, that was all rigging everything that was happening with the bones and everything else. Yeah. Oh, the other thing. Let's see if this is going to be worth our time. Well, if we're doing more reef, you know, underwater towards the bottom, not towards the top. Micro floaties is a tool. Yeah, Joel.
Is it like, are those like particles that are like really close to the camera?
It's just general particles. Looking for micro floaties? Yes. Apparently. Oh no. Jeez.
My internet wasn't working either.
What's that?
The internet on here wasn't working either.
Oh, this is his what? This is the. This. All right, let me see if I can hunt this down here. I also might have it in the previous semester. It does, microfloaties does like underwater particulate stuff. I mean, we can sort of do it here anyway. So let's go ahead and create, I'm just gonna create a plane. So this is the basic gist. We just need some stuff in the water, right? So I'm gonna make just a circle on the alpha channel. Right, so my plane, I'm going to make sure is only one width, 1 by 1. And then on the alpha channel, I'm going to come in here under gradient and make a circular gradient. and we want the opposite. We want just white dot. So I just get that, right? Just a little fuzzy thing. Good, and it's only one polygon. So that's super great, and probably want to make it close to like actual size. So let's just say 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. Now, let's go ahead and put this somewhere. So sphere, we're just going to clone this into a big area. So I'm going to use this sphere. I don't want this to be seen by anything. And this will be my, floaties. And this will be a one floatie. And MoGraph cloner. The cloner is going to clone the floaty into the floaties shape. Object floaties. And we don't want it to be on the surface of that circle or sphere. We want it to be in the volume. So just filling up the space. And these things are really small. I'm going to put it on multi-instance, which is the fast mode. And I don't know, let's make 5,000 of them. And let's see, are they showing up? They might be too small. Let's make them even bigger. What if they're 5 by 5? What's that? Oh, well, once you put it, yeah, there they go. All right, so you see them starting to show up here. When you tell it to be within the volume of something, it's kind of automatically randomized for position. It just fills the volume with the objects. And so there we go, we're getting a little bit of it. Let's make the floaties a little bit bigger. Let's say 10 by 10. There we go. And if we look at the actual render of that, we should see them starting to appear in the water. And again, I'm just creating some little speckles here, essentially. Just stuff.
You do that for snow and stuff too?
Yeah. Now they all face up right now, which is not what we want. So actually I'm going to make them small. I'm going to make them 5 by 5 again. And then cloner, MoGraph, effector, random. And we need to randomize rotation, 360, 360, 360. So they're all facing different directions. And the position here doesn't really matter because the position's already, well, no, we want position because I want to animate it a little bit. And so instead of just being random, I'll say turbulence. And you give it a very low animation speed, like 1, and then like a big scale. And if you look now, let's see, maybe faster, 5.
That's cool.
Maybe 20. There we go. Now you can see them moving. So they kind of, as they rotate, they kind of blip in and out. That's essentially what microfloaties is. It's got a few more things to it, but that's, it doesn't take that long to build anyway. And yeah, since we're in that multi-instance mode, you can really, the number of clones is not something to be afraid of here. So let's say 50,000. Casey said, breaking his computer.
Did you put them per step?
What's that?
Did you have to put them per step or something? With the clones?
Per step?
Yeah. Or no, that's with the other thing. Never mind.
There we go. So now we're getting some real, particulate in the water. The circle doesn't look like it's getting cut out. No, that looks really square there. Why does that look square? Oh, because I didn't put this material on the plane. That's why.
Betty.
Yeah. It's a whale party, and you're not invited. Ain't no party like a whale party. Yeah, so once you put that material on, that definitely cuts down the size of them a little bit. And so let's bump them back up to 10 by 10. this is a last, sort of finishing touch sort of thing, just to get some, variation, some flotsam and jetsam, essentially. That's the word for stuff floating in the water.
Oh, really? Is that why they named it the Little Mermaid? That's the-
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Person rescues.
Sea monkeys.
Okay, so the bottom ones look good. At the top, we're still getting the confetti. Why are we still getting the confetti? Has to do with the alpha channel. Let's see here. Let's look just at one of those confettis. So we can get some quicker feedback here. I'm going to try a compositing tag on this thing that says unchecked seen by rays. Yeah, it's just the light coming in that's doing that. It might be, let's see, this multi-instance thing. If you're not pointed up at the light, you won't have this problem, because if you look at the ones on the bottom, they're fine. The other option here is instead of a one polygon thing, you could also use, like a tiny sphere. So you could just make it really low res, like 4 segments, really small, like 1, and clone that instead. And that would also avoid this issue. Cool. Let me stop this one.